Jason Statham has always been known as the action star who shows up, works hard, and does everything he can with his own hands. Anyone who has watched him in movies knows he never stays on the sidelines. He rolls up his sleeves, does dangerous scenes himself, and pushes his limits every single time. People see him as the tough guy who never backs down, but behind the cameras, a very different story has been unfolding. In 2025, medical reports surfaced that revealed the real and frightening cost of his long and risky career. The reports listed broken ribs, multiple concussions, a wrist fracture that never healed correctly, and long-term damage from hundreds of high-impact stunts. His wife, Rosie, recently told him she needed him to stop doing certain dangerous scenes. She didn't say it out of fear or worry alone. She said it because doctors had given them news that shook both of them deeply. The man who survived drowning, dangerous falls, bee stings, and countless fights now faces a threat he can't simply punch, run from, or outsmart. This time, he cannot fight his way out of it, and that reality is what scares him most. Jason's story begins far from Hollywood. He was born on July 26, 1967, in Shirebrook, Derbyshire, a small place built on coal mining and hard labor. It wasn't the kind of town where people dreamed big. It was the kind of place where people worked jobs that broke their backs and often broke their spirits. Coal mines shaped the land and the lives of the men who worked in them. Jason grew up surrounded by the idea that survival always came before comfort. His father, Barry Statham, was born in 1939 and had lived through some of the toughest times in Britain. Cold winters with barely enough heat, jobs that didn't always pay well, and long stretches where work was scarce. By the time Jason was born, Barry took whatever jobs he could find. He painted houses, worked in coal mines, sold things on the street, and even did lounge singing in the Canary Islands when he couldn't find steady work at home. He never had the luxury to pick a dream. If something paid money, he did it. Jason's mother, Eileen Yates, brought something completely different into the home. She was a professional dancer, and she filled the house with rhythm and warmth. Her world was made of music, dim stage lights, and small pub performances. While Barry fought for income in the streets, Eileen danced under cheap spotlights to earn whatever she could. Jason grew up watching both worlds, grit and performance, struggle and style, dirt and flair. Their home wasn't broken, but it was always moving, always adjusting, always trying to survive. Jason's older brother, Lee, played guitar. Their father sang. Jason tapped out rhythms on anything he could find. Their little family felt like a traveling show, not because they wanted fame, but because they needed each other to make life work. When Jason turned 10, the family moved to Great Yarmouth, a noisy coastal town full of markets, visitors, and opportunities for street selling. Barry set up a stall and went back to selling cheap goods to anyone walking by. Jason watched him closely. He learned how to read people, how to talk fast, how to stay confident even when the day went badly. His father taught him how to survive, but Jason's world didn't stop there. Instead of becoming a full-time market seller, he discovered martial arts. At age 11, he began training seriously. Karate, kickboxing, and Chinese martial arts became his daily focus. Later he added Muay Thai, Judo, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and Krav Maga. He practiced every day, sometimes until his muscles burned. He earned a black belt in karate and mastered techniques that demanded precision and discipline. Martial arts didn't just make him strong. They kept him focused and kept him from drifting down a bad path. In school, he crossed paths with Vinnie Jones, long before either of them became famous. Jason played football from 1978 to 1983, and the field became another place where he learned discipline. He understood teamwork, timing, and strategy. Nothing came easily, so he pushed himself in every direction he could. At age 12, he added something new, competitive diving. What started as a simple activity turned into a professional career. He trained with Great Britain's national diving team for 12 years, mastering dives from 1, 3, and 10 meters. In 1990, at 23, he competed in the Commonwealth Games in New Zealand. He placed 8th, 11th, and 12th in his events. He didn't win any medals, and at one point he received a score so low that it stung deeply, but the failure didn't break him. Instead, it sharpened him. He realized he had started diving too late to become an Olympic champion, yet he refused to quit. He continued training while still helping his father sell items on the street. It wasn't a fun hobby. It was survival. Every sale mattered. In the mid-1990s, modeling agencies began calling. Between 1996 and 1997, he did campaigns for Tommy Hilfiger, Griffin, and Levi's. It sounded glamorous, but it didn't pay well. The money helped him stay afloat, but it didn't build a real career. In 1997, French Connection wanted someone who didn't look like a polished fashion model. They wanted someone raw, bold, and real. Jason fit the image perfectly with his shaved head, sharp jawline, and intense expression. Suddenly, his face was on posters across London, but the truth was that the attention didn't translate to financial security. He still had to hustle on the streets, selling fake perfume and knockoff watches just like he did when he was younger. At one point, undercover police almost arrested him for selling a counterfeit Rolex, but he talked his way out of it with calm confidence. That moment taught him something important: stay composed under pressure, use your voice, and never let fear show. That same skill later helped him land roles in movies. Before he ever acted in films, he appeared in music videos. In 1993, he danced in a rave-style video wearing leopard print briefs. In 1994, he appeared again in a video where he moved inside a golden cage. These moments were strange, bold, and unscripted, but people noticed him. Then everything changed in 1997. Director Guy Ritchie was searching for someone authentic, someone who could play a street hustler in his new film Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels. Jason walked into the audition with no acting resume but a lifetime of real experience. Ritchie told him to pretend to sell fake jewelry right there in the room. Jason did it so naturally that he got the role immediately. He earned only $5,000 for the film, but it was enough to open the door. The movie became a hit, and suddenly Jason's rough British accent and intense presence stood out. 2 years later, Ritchie cast him again in Snatch, where he played Turkish, a boxing promoter surrounded by danger and chaos. This time the budget was bigger, the cast was famous, and Jason had more to prove. He did many scenes himself, even breaking 2 ribs during one fight sequence. He kept going without complaining because quitting was simply not in his nature. But Jason's path wasn't smooth. Tension on the Snatch set almost turned into a real fight when he delivered a line so convincingly that co-star Benicio del Toro thought it was personal. Their conflict never made it into the film, but the intensity added to the realism of their scenes. Jason lived on the edge, and his performances showed it. When The Transporter came in 2002, everything changed again. Jason insisted on doing almost every stunt himself. He spent 2 months training before filming started, and he pushed his body beyond its limits. One of the most iconic scenes was the oil fight, where he battled multiple attackers while his entire body was covered in slippery oil. The scene took 15 takes and left him bruised and hurting for weeks. The car chase scenes were even more dangerous. He drove at high speeds through real streets in Marseilles, with no stunt double allowed in his contract. One mistake could have killed him, but he handled every moment with precision. The movie became a hit, pulling in more than $43 million. The stunts only became riskier. In Transporter 2, he climbed a 10-story building with suction cups, refusing to use wires or safety gear. Halfway up, one cup slipped. He fell 20 feet, injuring his ankle so badly that doctors insisted he rest for a week. He continued filming while limping, determined not to slow the production. Another stunt involved fighting inside a simulated plane with real hydraulic forces shaking the set. The pressure was so intense that actors had trouble breathing, but Jason kept his focus. Behind the scenes, arguments and cultural misunderstandings caused delays, but the movie still earned more than $85 million. In 2008, Transporter 3 pushed him even harder. One of the most dangerous scenes involved running while handcuffed to a truck, taking real hits against rough surfaces. He dislocated his shoulder but continued performing because the script needed it. Critics complained about the violence, but fans loved the raw realism. The film earned more than $18 million, and Jason's reputation as the toughest action star in Hollywood continued to grow. But all of this came with a price. Years of falls, punches, crashes, and risky stunts built up damage that no camera ever captured. Doctors recently told him that some injuries could worsen if he kept pushing himself the same way. His spine, ribs, and joints have taken more impact than most athletes handle in a lifetime. Some concussions didn't heal properly. Old fractures ache every time he trains. And the wrist injury he suffered years ago never healed the way it should have. The truth hit him and his wife hard. The man who had outrun danger his entire life now faced something he couldn't physically overpower. His body was trying to warn him, but Jason had spent decades ignoring pain. Now he was being told that ignoring it could cost him more than another stunt gone wrong. It could cost him his future, his health, and his time with his family. Jason has always been a fighter, shaped by hardship, survival, and determination. But today, his biggest challenge isn't on a movie set. It's learning when to stop, when to protect himself, and when to finally let his body rest. He built his life by pushing through fear, but now he must face a reality that demands caution instead of courage. And for someone like him, that might be the hardest battle of all. Pain was something he learned to live with. His shoulder stayed injured for months, and even though the pain followed him everywhere, he never once asked for a stand-in. He kept working, pushing through every scene like nothing was wrong. That same year, he took on a movie called The Bank Job, which was based on the real 1971 Lloyd's bank robbery. During filming, the team discovered that secret MI5 files connected to the robbery had only recently been released. Those documents revealed a government cover-up tied to stolen photos of a member of the royal family. Once that information surfaced, the entire production felt different. MI5 started watching the set. Producers hired security guards. People on set began to feel that this wasn't just a movie anymore, it was touching real secrets. The tension made everyone uneasy, but at the same time, the truth behind the story drew huge attention. Jason Statham wasn't just playing a thief, he was retelling a story the government had once tried to hide. That same bravery showed up again in Death Race. He drove armored cars at high speed, doing his own burnouts with no gloves. His hands burned from grabbing hot metal, but he didn't complain. One scene had a guard character getting decapitated by a prop while Statham slammed a car into it with full force. The MPAA almost refused to allow the film to be released. Censors wanted the scene removed, but the producers fought back, and the most brutal shot stayed in the final cut. The movie made millions, and critics said it felt almost too realistic. His team warned him many times to wear safety gear, but he refused. He wanted the action to feel raw, even when it hurt him. Then came the movie war. In one intense fight sequence, Jet Li and Jason Statham clashed swords in a scene practiced over and over for precision. But one small mistake caused the sword to slice open Statham's arm. Blood poured down, and he needed 12 stitches. He should have stopped, but he refused to slow down. He kept filming for another 12 hours with his shirt sticking to his wound. The director offered to pause the shoot, but he said no. The scar from that day never faded, and neither did the memory. It became a physical reminder that he wasn't just performing, he was truly fighting through every moment. Even when he stepped outside his famous transporter movies, danger still followed him. In The Italian Job, he drove a Mini Cooper through the subway tunnels of Los Angeles in a series of scenes shot with 32 different cars and more than 200 takes. At one point, the car rig used for an underwater shot malfunctioned and trapped him in a flooded tunnel. The crew managed to pull him out just seconds before he would have drowned. Later, he admitted it was the closest he had ever come to dying on a film set. He said, "I shouldn't have done it, but he did it anyway." Things became even crazier in Crank. He played a hitman who had to keep his adrenaline up or die. That meant running across real Los Angeles highways without any barricades to stop traffic. He ran through live traffic on the 110 freeway. Cars swerved around him. One vehicle even hit him. Filming had to be paused and legal issues followed, but that footage made it into the final film. It was chaotic, dangerous, and unforgettable. The danger wasn't just part of the movie, it became part of his identity. When he joined the Expendables in 2010 as knife-throwing mercenary Lee Christmas, he expected chaos, huge egos, explosions, and old-school action. But he never expected nearly to die 3 years later. In 2013, while filming The Expendables 3 in Bulgaria, the brakes failed on a truck he was driving. The vehicle shot off a pier and plunged into the Black Sea. He became trapped underwater, tangled in his own holster, sinking fast. He only escaped because he managed to slip through a window and swim up before blacking out. He later called it a nasty, life-changing experience. But instead of taking a break, he changed clothes and went straight back to work. His past as a competitive diver in the Commonwealth Games saved his life. Sylvester Stallone would later say, "Jason was a goner if he didn't know how to swim like that." The accident led to lawsuits and forced the entire production to rethink safety. It wasn't the only time things went too far. In 2011, during filming of The Mechanic, Statham insisted on using real explosions instead of CGI. This caused the movie's budget to rise to $50 million because practical special effects take more time and money. One explosion went wrong and hurt a stunt coordinator. Another detonation nearly hit him. The director later admitted it was Statham's choice to keep everything real, and while it added realism to the screen, it also caused real injuries behind the scenes. When the sequel came out, the stunts became even more dangerous, and so did the accidents. In Fast and Furious 6, Statham made his first full appearance as Deckard Shaw. One of his most dangerous stunts involved driving a car off a 260-foot ramp to recreate a dramatic plane crash. But on filming day, a sudden gust of wind flipped the car. Statham suffered whiplash and spent 2 weeks in the hospital. He later said it was one of the most dangerous things he had ever done, and the injuries reminded him that in moments like those, you don't really have control. Then came The Meg in 2018, a big-budget shark thriller. One underwater stunt nearly killed him. Inside a diving cage, the rig cracked under pressure and trapped him 45 feet below the surface. He stayed trapped for nearly a minute before managing to free himself. The fear was real, but he stayed calm, surfaced, and kept going. No stunt double. No retreat. The movie went on to make $530 million worldwide. Statham later said filming it was terrifying in a way that fight scenes never were because sharks don't take direction. In Mechanic, Resurrection in 2016, he pushed himself even further. One of the movie's most memorable scenes shows him climbing a skyscraper in Malaysia. In real life, he actually did it without safety gear in the early takes. At one point, he slipped and fell 30 feet, crashing onto concrete. He suffered a concussion, production had to stop, and parts of the script were rewritten. Statham later admitted that injuries like that often got ignored on his sets because everyone was so focused on finishing the job. He said, "Stunt actors put their lives on the line every day and barely get noticed." Not every danger he faced came from stunts. While filming The Comedy Spy in 2015, he became frustrated after the director changed the script without warning. He walked off set for a day, and people on the crew said it was the only time they had ever seen him truly angry. He eventually came back, and his performance became one of the highlights of the movie. It helped him show a different side of himself, but it also showed how seriously he took his image. That same year, during filming for Hobbs & Shaw in Samoa, he hit nearly 100 miles per hour on a motorbike for a chase scene. The bike hit a pothole, throwing him across the pavement. He broke his wrist. Still, he didn't stop or call for a stunt double. He healed and returned to finish the scene. Crew members said his refusal to fake anything made them admire him and worry about him at the same time. As the 2010s went on, critics started saying he was turning down too many dramatic roles. He even passed on an audition for The Dark Knight because he said he didn't like playing soft characters. Some thought he was limiting himself, but it worked for him. His brand grew into a $20 million per film powerhouse built not on awards, but on scars, grit, and action that felt real. Long before fame, in 1997, he met model Kelly Brook during a photo shoot. They dated for 7 years. He proposed in 2004, but weeks later she ended the engagement after being photographed with Billy Zane. Statham was devastated. Friends said he felt embarrassed and betrayed. Kelly Brook later said they might have lasted if they hadn't been under so much public attention. He spoke about it only once, saying he felt like a fool. The heartbreak stayed with him. He later dated model Sophie Dahl in 2005, but their relationship lasted only 6 months. She said his intense workout schedule and long filming days made him too distant emotionally. They cared for each other, but they knew they had no real future together. In 2010, he met Rosie Huntington-Whiteley. They went public quickly, but in 2011, after a fight at the Transformers premiere, they split briefly. They got back together, but things almost fell apart again when paparazzi chased them at high speed through Los Angeles. Rosie said it was the moment they realized fame could actually kill them. They stayed together through everything, and in 2017, they welcomed their son, Jack Oscar. She gave birth at home, and Statham was away filming Meg 2 for months. Rosie admitted the long distance almost destroyed them. They started therapy to rebuild their relationship and to learn how to protect themselves from the pressures of fame. In 2022, they bought a $14 million house in Beverly Hills, but soon drones were flying over their property. One drone came so close it nearly hit a window. The invasion made Rosie insist on setting limits for his stunt work. Statham once threw a shoe at a drone in frustration, but that didn't stop the intrusions. In January 2024, his movie The Beekeeper released quietly and then exploded into a major hit. It cost $40 million to make and earned $162 million. He played a retired assassin going after scammers. Even though he is allergic to bees, he did all the scenes himself and kept EpiPens on him during filming. He had mild allergic reactions but refused to use a stunt double. He said beekeeping scenes were scarier than anything else he had done. A sequel was approved before the year ended. In 2025, he starred in A Working Man, directed by David Ayer. It quickly became the top title on MGM+. Behind the scenes, Statham mentored a group of 12 young stunt performers. He taught them safety protocols and insisted on always having medical staff on set. He had spent 3 days in the hospital during a different project in 2023 and didn't want anyone else to go through what he did. Studios began following his lead, improving safety on their productions. By 2025, his movies had earned more than $8.5 billion worldwide. The Megalone made $530 million, and Hobbs and Shaw made $760 million. The Expendables franchise made more than $1.2 billion. But his biggest regret wasn't about money. In 2006, he didn't fight hard enough for an audition to play James Bond because the studio said he was too old at 39. In 2024, he said on a podcast that he wished he had pushed back. That rejection helped shape the kind of action star he eventually became. In 2020, he donated $1 million to diving programs in the UK. He said diving kept him focused as a teenager and stopped him from getting into trouble. By 2022, his donations helped fund more than 120 scholarships. In 2025, false reports appeared online claiming he had drowned in a flood or died in a car crash. All the stories were fake. He was in Italy, posting holiday pictures while the internet claimed he was dead. He laughed about it, but it also reminded him how closely people watch every move he makes. In 2025, he finished filming Levon's Trade, written by Sylvester Stallone and based on a novel by Chuck Dixon. The movie is scheduled for release on January 17, 2025. He plays Levon Cade, a quiet former Special Forces member pulled back into violence. The film is darker and more emotional than many of his other roles, and it aims to show another side of him. After decades of doing his own stunts, facing real danger, surviving heartbreak, and building one of the strongest action careers in Hollywood, he is still pushing himself to evolve, one bruised, powerful step at a time.